Whether you're a Braves fan or a Dogs fan, it feels good to be a winner. I'm Don Carswell, and you'll have fun with a winning deal from Dublin Chevy Nissan. Come and see our championship selection of new and pre-owned trucks here at Dublin Chevy Nissan. Titan or Frontier, it's your choice. Sierra or Silverado, you're the winner. For the W, all you have to do is call, click, or come in. And remember, Don sells cars well, only at Dublin Chevy Nissan.
The flu, this year we're seeing a lot more cases of it, but primarily that's because people aren't masking up like they did the previous year. So the best thing to do is just get vaccinated. Even if you got vaccinated last year, the flu vaccines are set up on an annual basis because it's got to be set up to treat the most predominant strains that are out there right now. And with Corona, you know, you always got to keep that one in mind, and we do Corona vaccinations here now.
We are honored to have Mr. Brent Manning from the U.S. Chamber to speak to us. His primary focus is to develop and maintain the public policy goals of the U.S. Chamber. He represents 8 states in the Southeast, a graduate of North Georgia, University of North Georgia. Please help me in welcoming Brent.
Thank you so much to Heath and the Dublin Lawrence County Chamber for inviting me here today. This is my first time speaking to your chamber, and I appreciate the opportunity to give an update today on where things stand in Washington and at the chamber. For those of you whom I have not met, I work for the U.S. Chamber in the Southeast region based in Atlanta. We focus our work on relationships made with the local and state chambers, as well as members of Congress from our region. We serve as a resource on federal policy that is important to the business community, typically for local chambers and their members. We rely on our Federation of Local and State Chambers of Commerce to keep our finger on the pulse of Main Street and to push our policies in Washington. So having your advice and counsel is much appreciated. The work that all of you do on behalf of your businesses here in your community is meaningful. And the partnership local chambers like the Dublin Lawrence County Chamber have with us at the U.S. Chamber is key to our success. For those of you who do not know much about the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, we are the world's largest business federation, and our members range from the small businesses and chambers of commerce across the country that support their communities to the leading industry associations and global corporations that innovate and solve the world's greatest challenges, to the emerging and small, fast-growing industries that are shaping our future. Usually when giving an update in early February, I'd lay out our policy agenda for the year and discuss the likelihood of the passage of any of those items. But this year is a little bit different. We're already into February and we haven't had any movement on anything significant in our agenda or on the nation's for that matter. Given that it's an election, we always see policy that is geared more towards the base of the party in power, gearing up for messaging during the election season, and so far that's all we're seeing. Much of the past several months have been focused on Biden's core agenda items that he ran on: transportation, Build Back Better, and the voting rights legislation. As you know, transportation passed, though not gracefully, last November, which had the business community's support. I'll come back to transportation in a minute. But the remainder of December and January saw no significant legislative results. Build Back Better fell apart, which was good news to the U.S. Chamber, as well as the voting rights legislation and a total swing and miss at dismantling the filibuster in the Senate. All of those failed. These were welcome failures from our perspective. We worked tirelessly to kill the so-called Build Back Better plan that would tax and spend over the next 2 years, create additional new programs, expand the payments that were included in the COVID relief legislation for another 2 years, which would have added further to the inflation that is being felt by businesses and households alike. As it appears, the Back Better bill in its $2 trillion form is dead, but Democrats still plan to attempt to pass parts of it in piecemeal fashion. I don't see many of those proposals, or maybe any, truly seeing the light of day, simply because, money aside, there's not consensus among Democrats on what should or should not be included. Not to mention, even in parts, the legislation still adds trillions to the national debt and would increase inflation at a time when our economy is still fairly fragile. I'm sure you've also followed along with the filibuster saga in D.C., hopefully not too closely, but enough to know that Democrats want to get rid of the filibuster so they can pass their agenda. This is the mechanism that retains a 60-vote majority in the Senate. The chamber strongly supports the filibuster, and we have fought back against any attempt to diminish it. As it stands, we feel confidently that it's safe for now because both Senator Manchin of West Virginia and Senator Sinema of Arizona have stood firm in their opposition to any changes to the filibuster. As it looks now, the only real movement over the next few months is going to be the funding bills. As it goes in recent years, Congress funds the government not in typical year-long increments, but in short-term stopgap funding bills called continuing resolutions, which extend current funding out for a specified amount of time. Congress extended the funding right before Christmas until February the 18th. As it looks now, the only real movement over the next few years, over the next few months, is going to be the funding bills. As it goes in recent years, they're not doing the year-long increments, they're doing the short-term CRs. As the February 18th expiration of the current CR is quickly approaching, House and Senate appropriators are working largely behind the scenes to reach an agreement on an omnibus appropriations package for the remainder of fiscal year 2022. To avoid a government shutdown, Congress will need to enact an FY 2022 omnibus or a long-term CR that extends current funding levels, or another short-term CR to provide additional weeks for a deal on a longer omnibus to be reached. Often large funding bills like the omnibus package that wraps all the spending bills into one large bill will be the vehicle to attach policy riders or legislation that wouldn't otherwise pass on their own. The main discussion now in DC is which path to take and if there will be policy riders on any omnibus bill. The House, needing only a simple majority, wants to include the policy riders, seeing as there's no other moving legislation this year to pass their priorities. But the Senate would need 10 Republicans to get to that 60-vote number necessary to pass a bill. And therefore, those policy riders would need to be bipartisan. Either way, there will have to be some sort of deal before February the 18th, which is only a few days away. And if I were to bet, based on history, they'll pass another short-term bill to give them more time to work on a larger deal, a larger package. But that's something we'll just have to wait and see. I want to also spend a minute on transportation and the bipartisan bill that passed at the end of last year. Not only because this is a huge win for the business community and for states and localities, but because all of you in this room should have a say on how those funds are being spent here in Georgia. This legislation was dragged pretty heavily through the mud politically, and what was a very bipartisan bill in the Senate turned into a very bitter partisan battle in the House. But the truth versus the myth part of this is that the bill contains funding for 100% physical infrastructure. It does not include any social spending or non-physical infrastructure, and the breakdown in spending over 5 years is $550 billion in new infrastructure spending overall. That is $387 billion for highways and bridges, and based on the formula, Georgia would expect to receive approximately $9.2 billion for federal aid, highway appropriated programs, and bridge replacement and repairs under this Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act over 5 years. Georgia can also compete for $15.77 billion as part of the Bridge Investment Program for economically significant bridges. And everywhere I go throughout Georgia, there are bridges that need repaired. Additional figures for Georgia are $1.4 billion for transit, $619 million for airports, not just Atlanta, $8 million for ports, and a minimum of $100 million for broadband. 10% of Georgians live in areas where under the FCC's benchmark, there's no broadband infrastructure. Even where infrastructure is available, broadband may be too expensive to be within reach. So this helps those households that do not have current internet availability. The bill also includes $54.2 billion for energy grid infrastructure and technology. And under this bill, based on the traditional state revolving fund formula, Georgians will expect to receive $913 million over 5 years to improve water infrastructure across the state to ensure that clean, safe drinking water is a right for all of our communities. Also, there's $22 million for wildfire prevention in the bill. Overall, it's estimated that Georgia will receive $12.34 billion in infrastructure investment from this bill. That comes out to a per capita number of $1,152 per person. This is a big win for chambers of commerce and the business community, as well as local and state governments who have shovel-ready projects that will help build economic growth for our cities. As advocates for Dublin-Lawrence County, you all have an important role to play on how this money is spent. The money will be divvied up based on a formula with about $80 billion in competitive grants awarded based on need. Some strategies communities are working on include ramping up civil, design, and technology discussions with community constituents and think tank organizations, and establishing infrastructure task forces or coalitions. Most importantly, we will be working with community leaders, businesses, and stakeholders, stakeholder organizations to make sure that you all prioritize your projects and that everyone is coming together with one plan versus multiple plans in a given community. Just Monday, the White House released their guidebook to this funding. This guidebook lists out what funds are available, how to apply, who to contact, and everything you'll need to access the funds from the law. And this info is available at whitehouse.gov/build. I can give you, there's a couple of websites in here I can give you afterwards. Additionally, the U.S. Chamber released our own website with resources for businesses and communities to learn more about the bill. And to get the latest updates on funding opportunities, our website is letsrebuildamerica.com. And before closing, I want to quickly touch on workforce, as it affects all of us in the room. Later today, we're expecting the jobs report from last month. Everyone is bracing for the worst, particularly given the surge of COVID cases due to the Omicron variant that has swept through the population over the last 2 months. Frankly, December the numbers were not good then either, and so we actually went one step further and asked why. The U.S. Chamber last month released a survey we conducted. We went out and surveyed individuals who had jobs prior to the pandemic, full-time jobs, who lost their jobs during the pandemic and have yet to return to work. We asked them, what are they doing? We asked them, are they looking for work? If you're not looking for work, how are you supporting yourselves? When do you anticipate getting back to work? And frankly, the results were pretty shocking in a negative way. It all points to the fact that the workforce shortage crisis isn't going away anytime soon. Less than half of those we polled said that they're actively and consistently looking for work. 1 in 5, 20%, say they're not looking for work at all. 56% believe that they can get by for at least another 6 months before it becomes essential for them to return to work. And so we asked, how are you supporting yourselves without a job? How are you paying for rent, groceries, bills? They're utilizing government stimulus checks. Just under half of those that we polled are doing that. Continued unemployment benefits, a little less than 40% are doing that. And a similar number are drawing down on savings, and they're relying on the earnings of individuals in their household. One big takeaway from this is that folks aren't coming back to the workforce anytime soon, and closing that $2.3 million person gap isn't going to be fixed anytime soon. It's going to be difficult. So this is where chambers can be helpful. It's our chance to step up and help fill that gap by working with the individuals in rooms like this and across the state and country to bring these folks back to work. Through the America Works initiative, we're working to solve these issues. We're trying to help employers like y'all develop and discover the talent you need. And to learn more about this, the last website I have for you is uschamber.com/work. And to close on a positive note, because I know a lot of what I said was not particularly uplifting, our CEO just gave her annual State of American Business address a couple weeks ago. And according to the data and the feedback from our members, American businesses remain resilient and they remain ready to compete. Many of our businesses are thriving and are bouncing back better than ever, but for those that are still struggling due to the pandemic, we're working to be sure that they have the resources they need to come out of this thing on top. So with that, if there's anything I can do or the U.S. Chamber can do, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Heath or whatever I can do to help you guys. That's sort of what I'm here on the federal level.
Hey, it's a great day for business in Dublin, Lawrence County. I want to share with you just real quick. I heard a man talking on the radio this morning, Tara, and I talked about this a minute ago. He was talking about the people that always talk about was and the people that talk about is. And I just made up two names and I call them the wasers and the isers. But you know these people that are always talking about what was and how it used to be and how we used to do things, or mistakes that they made, or things that they could have done better. Folks, it's so much better. Let's talk about what is, and let's talk about what is going to be. There's not a person in this room that can change yesterday or 5 minutes ago. But we have this day. We have this day. This is the day the Lord has made, and we can rejoice and be glad in it. There are so many wonderful opportunities ahead of you today. Don't let yesterday rob you of 1 minute of your joy today. With that, thank you, and we are adjourned.
The City of Dublin Natural Gas provides the most cost-efficient source of energy available today. So for your home, choose the most natural resource. Safe, clean, efficient. All new subdivisions around the Dublin area have natural gas available. Start reducing your energy bills today with Dublin City Natural Gas Department. Natural gas, the smart choice. Call 277-5048 today and let us help you start saving today.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dustin Gay. I'm a local orthopedic surgeon with Houston Clinic Orthopedics, and we'd really like to invite everybody to come out to our new office facility to take a look at it. It's a larger space with physical therapy, and we're just excited to have it, and we'd love for people to come out and visit us.
Come by and see us today at our brand new location, the Houston Clinic, Medical Drive in Dublin.